Get ready with me while I give you the very eventful story time of my first kiss. So to set the scene, it was Thanksgiving break 2021, so I was 16, and my cousin from Wisconsin was in town. Every time she's in town, we always stay at my other cousin's house, where a bunch of teenagers happen to live. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and my cousin Kyla and I were riding bikes around the neighborhood, and we happened to run into some of those teenagers. So Kyla and this guy, we'll call him Jake, they had a little thing when she was there, but this story isn't about him, it's about his brother. We hung out with those teenagers, but it wasn't until Thanksgiving, which was the next day, that we met his brother, Zach. So the night of Thanksgiving Day, we were playing Manhunt with all of the neighborhood kids, and then Zach told me to follow him into the woods. I ended up following him into the woods, and keep in mind, the only thing I knew about him was his name. The only thing I know about him now is still his name. I don't even know the guy. The place where we were in the woods had a little chair, and I remember sitting on the chair, and word by word, he goes, "How about I sit on the chair and you sit on my lap?" I didn't know the guy, so I was just like, "Oh, no thanks. Like, I'm good." Well, it started getting later, and he suggested that him and Jake and me and my cousin all go back to his house. I knew my cousin was going to be there, so I was like, sure, nothing bad will happen. So we get in his house and we sneak upstairs past his parents, and first thing he does is, "Macy, follow me," into his room. Stupid me should have said no, but I followed him in his room, and he locks the door. Now the first thing he does when we're in there is offer me, I was just like, no, I don't do that stuff. I'm underage. He proceeds to push me against his locked door and push himself against me, and word by word goes, "Wanna make out?" Like, what a freaking weirdo. Like, before I could even answer, his face was already on my face. So after like 2 seconds, I yanked myself away, and this is when I look like an idiot. I took the door, and for 5 seconds, I'm trying to push it open to leave, but it was a pull door. I finally got out of there, grabbed my cousin, and I've never spoken to this man since. Oh yeah, I do remember more than his name. He was like 18 years old. Please leave your story times in the comments, because I really want to see if anyone's is worse than mine.
This is the story of the time I was just a few seconds away from being kidnapped in Miami. I met this guy that I'd been seeing for a few months, and he was living back and forth between Miami and Baltimore. I'd never been to Miami before, so on one of his trips, he actually invited me to come stay with him. Looking back, there were so many red flags, but I was thinking about moving to Miami at the time, so I was like, okay, this should be a good opportunity. Day freaking 1 of us being there, we were already getting into arguments that were blowing so far out of proportion. I mistakenly chalked it up to us just being tired from our travels and plane flight and maybe a little bit of jet lag, but I was very wrong. The arguments kept getting worse and like progressively more confusing over the course of the days that we were there, until finally one night everything came to a head. All of a sudden I was sitting outside of his door, clothes all over the hallway with my suitcase, and I had just been kicked out. Without getting into too much detail, basically what happened was he was cursing his mom out on the phone, and this was not the first time, so finally I said, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing that, and he did not like that. I got myself down to the lobby, a complete wreck, mind you, mascara all down my face, and I asked the receptionist to book me a hotel for that night, but she said it was far too late into the night and that nothing would be available. So I sat myself down in the lobby, and a few short minutes later, a guy came up to me asking if I was okay. He said that he lived just a block away and that his girlfriend was there if I wanted to come back, get cleaned up, and just have somebody to talk to about what was going on. Now, this is where I fell, because I was sad in a city I didn't know, and I said yes.
I was almost kidnapped in Miami, the much awaited part 2. If you haven't watched the first part, go click on it right now because I'm getting right into it. So we start walking towards this guy's apartment, and it is literally pitch black outside. I don't know what this man was doing, but we were taking the most detour-esque path under bridges, through construction sites. We're like 15 minutes into the walk, and I start asking him, I'm like, hey buddy, like you said it was only a block away, and we're still walking. And he's like, yeah, sorry, it's like right up here. So we get to his apartment, and it's like a pretty normal looking place. On our way into the building, his phone like starts ringing, and he looks at it and he says, oh, my girlfriend's calling. And on the phone, he literally says, hey, yeah, I've got her. We'll be up in a second. Now at this point, my spidey senses are just like flaring, because at no point during this entire interaction from when I met him up until this point did he pull out his phone and tell his girlfriend that I was coming over. He did not look at his phone once. When he ends that call, we're in the elevator, and at this point I'm like, I follow him through the hallway to get to his door, and then he unlocks it, and it's so dark. There's not a single light on, and there's one couch in the corner and clothes everywhere. And I'm just like thinking to myself, I'm like, there is no way that a female woman, breathing girl is living in this environment. I don't even bother asking him where his girlfriend is because at this point I know that there isn't one. I remember he just like looks at me, like looks up and down as if to like assess me and says, I'm gonna go take a quick shower, make yourself comfortable. So I'm kind of just standing there like frozen for a second and I hear the shower turn on. And that right there is when it gets weird because I hear not one, but two male voices talking in like this hush hush whisper voice. And I'm like, so I turn around to the door and go to unlock it. And right as it makes the little click sound, the door to the bathroom opens and I'm just like, I didn't even bother with the elevator. I found the staircase, started running down it, and I never looked back.
When I was 8 years old, I tried framing someone and saying that they ran me over with their truck. So I had a really, really big case of middle child syndrome, which meant like my older and younger sister always got attention and I never did. And I would do so much stupid as a call for attention, and this was one of them. So all growing up, my mom had this rule that nobody was allowed to go over to anyone's house, no exceptions. I wasn't allowed to go hang out with friends, nothing like that, and only people were allowed to come over to my house. Well, I had my cousin, well, in Latino culture, you call them your cousins, even though they're just family friends. She was a family friend, and I wanted to go hang out with her house, but the problem was that she lived in like a townhouse, but it wasn't her townhouse, it was her mom's boyfriend's townhouse, and they had just recently started dating. So my mom was already sketched out about the idea of me going over there, but I begged and begged and begged and begged, and she was like, okay, you know what, you can go. And we're going to call my cousin B, and we're going to call her mom's boyfriend Hector. So Hector was the nicest man ever. Like, he was so sweet to B and everything like that. It was only like a momentary thing, but the sweetest man I've ever met. Would cause no harm. So since my mom was already like kind of worried about the idea of me being over there, I obviously like went over there a couple times. The first few times, everything was fine. I noticed that B was just a very genuine, caring man. And I was like, cool. But then my mom would always ask me when I'd come home, she's like, hey, Christina, like, was it okay? Did anything happen? Is there anything you want to talk about? Just like interviewing me, making sure that nothing had went wrong. So one of those days, I decided that I was going to tell my mom this elaborate story about how Hector grabbed his brand new black truck and ran me over with it, and how he told me to go lay in the middle of the road and he was going to run me over a few times. So my mom was like, what? And obviously he didn't run me over with this truck. Like, I don't think I would have survived that at 8 years old. But my mom was just kind of feeding into me telling this lie. And she was like, oh my God, Christina, like, we need to go to the police. And of course, at this point, I'm like, no, fuck, we don't need to go to the police. It's fine. Nothing happened to me. I'm in one piece. Like, just ran me over. It's fine. And my mom just like kept feeding into it. She's like, no, Christina, like, we need to go to the police. How dare he do that? And she calls Hector up and she's like, Hector, how dare you run my daughter over? And I am literally full on panicking. So my mom's like, Christina, talk to Hector. And so she passes me the phone and I'm like, Hector, you ran me over with your truck. And he denies it because he didn't run me over with the truck. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, he would say I'm lying. But little girls don't lie like that, like over these things. So my mom makes me go and file a police report, right? She takes me to the police station. She's like, Christina, are you telling the truth? And I'm like, yes, I am. Sorry, part two. Part two of me framing someone running me over with their truck. Okay, so we are outside of the police station. I'm bawling hysterically. I remember vividly, like, and I continue to try and like lie and say like that Hector would never tell the truth about running me over with the car. But my elaborate like lie was that he told me to lay in the middle of the road and he ran me over multiple times with his truck. And so Hector knew that I was lying. My mom knew that I was lying. Everybody knew that I was lying. And I was fully like believing that they believed my story. I mean, she took me to the police station. So I was like, well, I've basically gotten away with it. I need to get away from this police station because I can't go in there and lie and like give this man like a criminal record for running me over. So I am like crying to my mom, telling her that I forgive Hector for running me over and that it doesn't matter if she forgives him, but I forgive him. And he does, like, we don't have to go to the police because I have made amends with being ran over. And she was like, Christina, are you sure you forgive Hector? And I was like, yes, I obviously forgive Hector. Like, we're friends. Like, he would never intentionally hurt me. So, then we go home. I need to come clean. I was feeling guilty. With that being said, I went upstairs to my mom and I sat down, and I remember this part vividly. I sat down on her like couch in front of her bed, and I told her, I was like, Mom, I need to tell you the truth. Hector did not run me over, like nothing happened. I made it all up.